Hello everyone, happy Friday. I'm Robin, and I don't know about you, but I am very curious of what my hooch looks like under the microscope. This is my hooch. So hooch is a slang term for booze. However, it is actually, I don't want to say the technical term, but it's what they call the liquid that forms on top of your sourdough starter. And this is alcohol, so appropriately named hooch. And yeah, I'm about 2 years late to the game. I just started a sourdough starter. Here's my freshly fed sourdough starter right here. Now, if you also just didn't tune in to all the baked goods that people were making during quarantine, a sourdough starter is a mixture of flour and water that you continue to feed and grow wild bacteria and yeast that you can use to leaven your dough. And I do not bake, but I felt compelled to start a sourdough starter and start to bake some bread. I guess my sister started one recently and it motivated me to start one because she keeps sending pictures of her beautiful sourdough bread that she's been making. Of course, anything that is fermenting or has some type of microbes in it gets me curious. I want to know what that looks like under the microscope. And that's exactly what a sourdough starter is. It's full of yeast and bacteria that it's picked up from the environment in your apartment or your home and from the flour itself that you use. I just use good old-fashioned all-purpose flour for my sourdough starter, in case anyone's asking. And I have seen that it's suggested to use some whole wheat. It's said that the whole wheat has just more wild microbes in it. As I've been continuing to try to feed and grow my sourdough starter, I don't know if I'm doing a good job. It has made some hooch. And yeah, some people on the internet say to mix this back in to the starter, and others say to pour it off and discard it. But of course I didn't discard it. I want to see what's in it. If it's easy to separate, I've poured it off. If there's just a little bit there or it's somewhere within the bubbles of my sourdough starter, I'll just mix it back in. So yeah, again, I don't know if it's the right thing or the wrong thing, but there's mixed messages on the internet. So I'm just gonna do what I want, I guess. So on the first day of growing up my sourdough starter, after the first 24 hours, it smelled very cheesy. It was like the powdered cheese that you put in Easy Mac. And of course I just fed this, so it's not gonna smell super funky, but it is a little less funky and a little bit more sweet. And it currently smells a lot like dough. So yeah, let's give the hooch a little sniff and see what that smells like. Oh gosh, that's not very pleasant. Okay. Wow, this is hard. It's reminding me more of like vegetables that have gone bad. A little bit like steamed Brussels sprouts. And there's some stinky cheese in there. It's not a Parmesan. Okay, the more I leave this open, the better it gets. Or the more acclimated to this stink I'm getting. Maybe a little bit more provolone. Okay, all right, well, that's interesting. Before we take a look at the microscope, I want to give a huge shout out to my Patreons. Thank you guys so much for supporting the channel and for starting this community over on Patreon. And if you would also like to support the channel and join our community, I'll leave the link to our Patreon in the description below, and I would greatly appreciate having you join us over there. Otherwise, if you just want to still support the channel, give this video a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe and share with friends, and leave me a comment below. Now let's take a look at my sourdough starter and my HOOCH under the microscope. Wow. Okay, so there is a lot going on in both the sourdough starter and the HOOCH. And I think even if I had a degree in microbiology, I wouldn't be able to identify all the different yeast and bacteria that are in there. Tons of bacteria. But luckily, some people have tried to do that. They've been doing some research looking at various sourdough starters. There's one called the Global Sourdough Project, and they analyzed 560 samples of homemade sourdough starters. That's a lot. And they figured out what yeast and bacteria were in there. And yeah, again, there's a lot. A research article published in January 2020 by Reese et al. Showed that there was a high diversity of microbes in sourdough starters produced by various bakers, even though they were using the same ingredients. The data showed that there was a lot of Saccharomyces species and a lot of Lactobacillus species. However, the quantities varied and the species varied. There were also some other yeasts that I can't pronounce and some bacteria such as Streptococcus, Pediococcus, and Lactococcus. It's also said that your sourdough starter doesn't reach kind of homeostasis until at least 2 weeks in. So mine's still changing and growing, which is great. Leave me a comment below if you have a sourdough starter, what's going on with it, or yeah, anything else you want to say in the comments. Hey Google, what kind of bacteria are shaped like triangles?
On the website pubmed.ncbi.nlm.nih.gov, they say, a new bacterium has been isolated. Its cells are of a triangle shape and have a radial symmetry. The organism was compared with 2 other bacteria of a triangle shape described earlier. It differs from them by morphology and physiology. People also sometimes ask me, what is the shape of a bacteria? Do you want to hear the answer?
No. Such as, I can't pronounce those.